interruption. Again, so many families who are impacted. And so maybe for some of you guys, this scene looks familiar. Right? This scene may look real familiar because that was life before coronavirus hit. So over 30 days ago, and that hasn't been long at all, many of us were out there making it rain, spending our money however we choose without a thought about an interruption. And then all of a sudden, now we are not only clutching our pearls, we clutching our cash, we clutching our families and our loved ones. And it's all because of this pandemic and what it has actually created and caused. So let me know that you can see the graphics in the video, because I can't see the chat function. So just let me know that you guys can see me and that everything is working correctly. And so in this time, a lot of this has really been caused because in the month of March, we saw over 700,000 jobs lost. 700,000 jobs were just wiped out. And most of that came from the hospitality industry, where restaurants and bars ended up laying off a lot of their employees because they could no longer service their employees inside. A couple of weeks ago, my dentist office actually called because they aren't accepting any appointments at this time. So I had my reoccurring dentist appointment set up. So healthcare professionals, not necessarily the ones on the front lines, but the ones that are providing some other kind of preventative or maintenance medical procedures, a lot of those jobs are wiped out. And so the reason this is causing such a bit of havoc right now is because even before the pandemic hit, unfortunately, there were approximately 40% of all Americans who couldn't survive or couldn't really cover a $400 emergency expense. And they couldn't cover it with cash, they couldn't cover it with savings, and they couldn't cover it with credit cards without having it take a minute to even pay it off, right? So even if you had access to credit, it wasn't something that you could pay off very quickly. And so when you combine these two things, when you combine a consumeristic society who doesn't really believe in saving and who really is all about the here and now, where we're not taking care of our business by saving our money, and then tackle that with a loss of income, it can be really devastating. And I'm not sure where you are in the process or how the pandemic has specifically impacted you, but I will tell you this, when you combine these two, it can create an explosion for people. It can create an explosion for hardworking families. And so whether or not you've been laid off, whether or not you have been furloughed, meaning you are being asked, or not even asked, but mandated to reduce your hours or to cut back the days or the time period that you are being paid, we project that this is not going to be a short-term interruption. This could potentially last for a few months. And so whether or not you feel that your current employment is secure, this information could still help you kind of prepare just in case things lasted a little longer and it gets a little tougher, even for those who are still kind of working from home. So I'm going to go through 4 tips for you to kind of help you get your mind around surviving a financial interruption. And it's going to go really quick and it's going to make a lot of sense. So the very first one, before we jump into that, let me properly introduce myself. So for those who don't know me, my name is Holly Reid Tootle. I'm a CPA and a certified financial educator. And I am passionate about financial education, financial literacy. April is financial literacy month. So I was like, what could I bring to the forefront to really help people during this place and time? And so just to share a little bit about me, born and raised right here in the South. I'm actually based in Atlanta, Georgia. I was born into a large family where my mom was one of 11, my dad was one of 9. And so I have a large extended family on both sides. And then I grew up in a household where I'm the youngest of 4. And now today I am a wife and a bonus mom to my stepson, Cameron, who's actually at home now attending university online because of this whole rigmarole, right? And so in addition to that, you are in good hands. Again, I mentioned that, I'm a CPA and I'm a certified financial educator, but that's not where I started. The reason that what brought me into this field is that many years ago, I experienced a layoff myself during the tech boom, lost my job, and actually had to crawl back to my parents for support and just financial support to be that bridge. And thank God I had parents who could help me with my finances, because many people fall into a situation where they're laid off or furloughed and they don't have that safety net. They don't have anyone. So what do you do in those cases? But just going to my parents, showing them my credit card bills, that was a humbling experience that I knew I never wanted to experience again. It was something where I knew that I needed to spend my life differently. And so I just started reading all I could about money management, learning all I could, and I managed to claw my way out of over $30,000 of consumer debt. This was credit card debt, student loan debt, just buying things that I couldn't afford at the time, but buying things to live a certain lifestyle and to kind of just fit in with everyone else. And it was a big wake up call for me that once I figured out what worked for me, and once I paid off all that debt, it was like a fire lit inside of me where I wanted everyone I knew and everyone I didn't know to know what it was like to live on the other side of debt. And so that's my personal story. And so that is what really drove me to pursue, the certification in financial education and to become a personal financial coach to help people who were often like me, making hardworking, making a decent salary, but just needed to put the foundational building blocks in place in order to build wealth and to have a successful financial future from there. And that brings me here today as to why we're really talking about all of this. And so, like I said earlier, we are going to tap into 4 steps that should really help you get on the right track and build your confidence. Because in a time like this, we are so caught up in watching the news and watching all the projections and all the uncertainty, and that can just generate a lot of fear and uncertainty and anxiety for people. But when you have the knowledge and when you have the know-how, a lot of times fear can be placed aside. And instead, I want to empower you with information so that you can move forward, take action, and do it with a sense of confidence. So the very first step is you have to review your expenses. So this is the easy one, right? The very first thing that if you are looking to survive a financial interruption, you have to review all of your expenses. Pull out a pen and paper. I don't care if you use an app like Mint. Pull out a spreadsheet if you're a spreadsheet person, but you need to know what you're working with and maybe what's working against you. So this is where I just want you to write out all of your upcoming expenses. And when you list out the upcoming expenses, you need to include 2 things alongside everything. You want to write the amount due and the due date. So this is your rent, your mortgage, car note, utilities, subscription services, everything. Everything, write it all down. And as I was kind of pulling all of this information together, I came across this really funny meme. So everybody is into Baby Yoda, right? And so this one is like, I've almost completed my 90-day trial of 2020, and I would like to cancel because this has been a rough start for a lot of people. And so we need to take that same mentality and apply it when it comes to our expenses and our finances. And it's a perfect lead in into step number 2, which is to prioritize all of your expenses. So now that you've written them all down, now it's time to prioritize them. And when I'm talking about prioritize them, this is where you need to determine what's a need and what's a want. And of course, we want to fulfill all of those needs first. So you want to look at what expenses you might have to postpone, skip, or get paid later. And I know that might feel really uncomfortable during this time because you've been committed, you've been able to pay your bills in the past, and this may be a really uncomfortable space, but it is a necessary exercise. So look at your list. What can be postponed? What can be skipped? And what can be paid later? And so as you prioritize, this is also, you're not only going to be uncomfortable, but you may need to be vulnerable. Putting your ego aside, and this is where I am encouraging you to start calling and talking to your lenders. Yes, everyone knows about the coronavirus. Everyone knows about, the unemployment rate skyrocketing, but that does not mean that your lender or whoever you owe is going to automatically put you in a plan or defer your payments. It's not going to be automatically. So you have got to pick up that phone and start calling people. Start calling and pleading your case, letting them know that you have been impacted by the pandemic, and to see what options they have in place for you to either postpone, skip a payment, or pay them later. And that goes from everything. So even if you're renting, go to your landlords, go to your mortgage companies. And thankfully, the CARES Act has included a lot of atypical stipulations in the act, which is putting a moratorium on evictions so that people aren't really scared or worried about being kicked out. I know the city of Atlanta, like even with utility bills, if people bills were late and on the verge of being disconnected, they are not disconnecting those utility bills at those times. Because if you were having a hard time now, imagine you're going to be in an even tougher situation in the midst of this crisis. So just pick up the phone, call your lenders, take advantage of the offers, the deferments that they are making available to us. But listen, if you are still working, if you are still receiving a paycheck, if you have not received an interruption in your income at all, please still pay. It's the right thing to do. Please continue to pay your bills as usual, because landlords are people too. When you think about it, like they still have to pay their mortgage or figure out a way or apply for a program or whatever the case may be. But I'm using landlords as an example because that is often the largest expense for people and can be the largest burden when it comes to a financial interruption. So when you make these phone calls, when you make these arrangements, you want to make sure you're documenting who you're talking to, the date, the name of the person, what the agreement was, and even encourage them to put it in writing and to send it to you so that there's no confusion, right? And if there are any misinterpretations, you can see it before it begins and you can clear it up before the process is all over and you have to pick up making payments. So take advantage, but also make sure that you are honoring the arrangements and paying as soon as you are able to pay, right? So the good news, like I said before, is that so many companies, cell phone companies, are already giving people payment options or options to defer payments or waiving late fees and that type of thing. So just make sure that you're aware of that. So that's number 2, prioritize all of your expenses. And this is where the advice, just call your lender, seek assistance. And number 3 is to make a plan to pay. You got to make a plan to pay these expenses. Now, most people can pay their expenses directly from their checking account, right? But if you are experiencing an interruption in your income, what's your next source of funding once the checking account dries up? What is it? So for most people, it's going to be your savings account or your emergency fund. And this is the perfect time now to dip into that emergency fund. It's 4 times such as this where you can start using that money. However, if you have not been saving regularly, don't beat yourself up about it, but you need to start thinking about some alternate options. So do you have any certificates of deposit that you've been allowing to accumulate? Any kind of other accounts that maybe you put away to the side? Just go through and try to jog your memory on where you might have some cash stashed where you can get to it quickly. And for certificates of deposit, if you have any of those with your financial institution, a lot of them carry penalties if you try to withdraw the funds before the expiration date. But call your bank. Again, call and ask for these penalties to be waived during this time. Many will do it because they totally understand the circumstance. Now, if things are really tight and you don't have an emergency fund, a lot of people will then turn to their credit cards, right? They'll turn to credit cards and they'll start looking maybe to get personal loans from their bank or their credit unions. And if you have to rely on credit cards, if you have to rely on personal loans at this time, here are a couple of things. It's dangerous ground, first of all, because I don't want you to get into any unwanted debt. So I do want you to tread carefully if that's an option that you are considering. But if you do, if you don't have any other options, you need to know the interest rates that are being charged. If the interest rates are really high, again, pick up the phone. We have got to communicate and over communicate during this time. Pick up the phone and ask for lower interest rates for the purchases you are making during this time. A lot of people, you're not asking for them to forgive your debt. You're just asking to make it a little less expensive for you for times like this. Now, with credit cards, you want to avoid doing credit card cash advances because those are just extraordinary high interest rates. So if you can avoid that, please do. When it comes to loans, again, check with credit unions, join a credit union if you're not a member already, because they often will offer lower rates and more favorable rates than our big banks here in America. So just take a look at that. I know, again, people understand, and so they will work with you. You just need to call and make those negotiations on your behalf. Now, things I want you to absolutely avoid are these payday loans. We know these organizations or institutions or locations, they are predatory lending, right? Where the interest rates are just astronomical. They are ridiculous. And so you want to make sure you avoid things like that. The other thing you want to avoid, try to avoid any early withdrawals from your retirement accounts. Now, look, when I looked at the CARES Act, retirement accounts, most of them, when they are pre-tax retirement accounts, like your 401k accounts where you put in money before taxes are taken out, a lot of them have the stipulation where you can't withdraw money before you're 59 and a half years old. Well, with the CARES Act, they are actually allowing you to withdraw money out of your retirement accounts through the end of this year without any penalties, without that, early withdrawal penalty. And I think the amount that they are allowing you to withdraw out of right now is up to $100,000. Now that's a lot of money. Now, but is it the right thing to do? My recommendation is to avoid it at all costs if you can. It may seem like a viable option. I've heard a lot of people rationalize it like, well, I'm actually borrowing from myself. And so I'd actually just be paying myself back. But the truth of the matter is, when you take that money out of the market, you are going to lose the time and the opportunity for that to pick up and grow. Even in a declining market, if your strategy is to leave that money in long term, when you're in your 60s and 70s, to be able to draw on that money, compound interest is real. And so the market wins every time. If you follow the history of the stock market and investments in the stock market, it may be down now, but it is going to come back. And so if you take it out now, you're going to miss that opportunity for you to reap the benefits of the gains later on. So my personal advice is, if you can avoid it at all costs. Okay? All right. And so the next one, the last step, is number 4. And this is to look to make or find ways to make extra cash. Now, I know you're thinking, Holly, this is easier said than done, but let me give you some options, right? So, for in the short term, you got your unemployment benefits. Again, with the CARES Act, they have expanded the unemployment benefits that now it includes freelancers, independent contractors. It includes self-employed individuals. It also has expanded to include employees who may be furloughed or whose hours may be cut. So maybe you haven't been permanently laid off, but maybe your employer decided that instead of paying you for 5 days a week, I'm only going to ask you to come in 4 days a week. And so you've lost that day of income, right? And so you are eligible. You can actually go and file for unemployment benefits to help close that gap. So, again, put your pride aside and go down to the unemployment office and reap the financial helping hand that is being extended. And so at the end of this, I have a resource that you can be able to download and just click and see how to apply for unemployment benefits in your state. Now, the next short-term payment is your tax refund check. It is 2019. April 15th was yesterday. Many of you know they have extended the federal filing date from April 15th to July 15th. Now, if you typically receive a refund when you file your personal tax returns, there's nothing stopping you now from filing your tax returns now before July 15th. You don't have to wait until then, and go ahead and get your money. That's your money, right? You have just loaned it to Uncle Sam for over a year, and it's time to get it back. So as long as you feel comfortable that you're gonna still get a refund or whatever, and the only way to know is to go ahead and prepare the tax returns, I would say go ahead and get your money. So that's a short time burst of cash flow that can actually help during this time. And then finally, we all have talked about the one-time stimulus payments that have started going out this week. So if you have received yours, congratulations. If you haven't, it's coming. And so let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So a couple of weeks ago, CNN put out this chart that kind of shared the stimulus payouts based off of your adjusted gross income. And so it's going to be based off of your 2018 tax returns or your 2019 tax returns if you filed already. So if you haven't filed 2019, then they're going to look at 2018. And so whether you are married are single, these are the increments. And it even gets even more detailed than this, but this is a high level version of, hey, if you make up to $150,000, you're going to get $2,400 for a married couple. Or if you are single and you make 75,000 or less, you're going to get that full 1,200. And so it just goes down as your income goes up. And so one of the things that's not shown on here is if you have a dependent under the age of 16, if you claim any dependents on your 2018 or 2019 tax returns, then you will get $500 per dependent, okay? And so I put at the bottom, because they just released this, I think yesterday, a website called Get My Payment, where you can go online and get a status of your payment. And this is day number 2 for that site to be up. So I haven't heard a lot of favorable things about it. I actually went out there today before jumping on for my parents, just to see what their status was, see when their check was going to come. And it was not helpful. So it did not give me the information that I went out there for, but hopefully it is more helpful and beneficial to other people. So that's the site. If you want to go out there, check your status. I think you can go to that same site if you want to make sure that they have your direct deposit information versus waiting longer for a manual check. All right, so that's the stimulus payment. So those were your 3 short term. You got your unemployment benefits you can go file for, which will be taxable. Let me add that. Unemployment benefits, those are going to be taxable next year. Then you have your refund check. If you normally get a refund check, go get it. And then we have this one-time stimulus payment. So those are short spurts that could really help you. Now, for long-term payouts, listen, companies are still hiring. They are still hiring. And so again, at the resource that I share at the end, it gives you a link to over 35 companies that are hiring in the midst of all of everything that's going on. And then I also include a list of companies that are 100% remote. So whether the pandemic was going on or not, all of their employees or a good portion of their employees work remotely anyway. And so I list those companies as well. So you can go and check them out if you are on the market and looking for full-time employment or looking to make a change because you realize your company may not survive another pandemic like this. Yeah, so check that out. And then, of course, I'm going to encourage everyone to activate your plan B. Now, Holly, what is your plan B? For me, my plan B is the Master Playbook. I created this financial education and wellness company based off of my passion, and I knew that I could monetize it. So my question to you is, what is it for you? What is your skill? What is your talent? What is something that you're really interested in or purpose to do that you could monetize? And so this is where I'm going to encourage you to get really creative, right? How creative can you be? And I'm going to help you guys out just a little bit, just to get the juices flowing. So if you are an artist, if you are a musician, dancer, someone who loves crafts, you know that these kids are driving their parents crazy in the house with them, right? Parents are probably on Amazon every other day looking for some kind of activity for them to do. If you fall into this category, you can create some kind of virtual program that would keep the kids' attention, that would, help them, teach them dance, teach them how to do different crafts, or create worksheets in Canva or on some kind of platform that you could then sell to parents who are struggling, trying to homeschool and keep their kids busy and occupied. And this is especially helpful for creatives where, the kids need a break from all the academics. They need something that will fuel their creativity. So this is something that could work perfectly for you. For teachers, again, the kids, if you are teaching them one way, but you have some ideas around supplemental exercises or things that could help kind of drive home the point, or um, take the students who may have gotten the concepts and you want to help grow them faster. Again, like I said, create a supplemental curriculum, or create some activities that the parents would potentially purchase more for some extra help, or just to keep them busy during the day. So I want to share an example. I don't know if you guys know about these two ladies, but their company is called the Furlough Cheesecake. And it was born after these two sisters who were federal employees were furloughed from their federal government jobs, I think last year or in 2000. Oh, don't make me say the year. Okay, but the last time the federal government had a furlough, and I think that was last year. And so they were looking for ways to supplement their income. They had, they got so many compliments on their cheesecake recipe that they started making cheesecakes. Ended up getting picked up on the Ellen show, Ellen broadcast what they were doing, and their business took off. Now, today, these two ladies, they're out of Maryland. These two ladies, they still have their federal jobs, but during that time, it made them realize the importance of having multiple streams of income. And so this business still exists today. If you want to go out and buy a furlough cheesecake, you absolutely can. So you just have to be creative. Take an inventory and just of your skills and your talents and things that you would want to do. Now is the perfect time to try out some of those things and to see if there's a market for it, and to see if you can actually make money from it, right? So I encourage you, that's another thing, is to just explore your talents and try to monetize them. Now, let's review. These are the 4 tips that we walked through today. They are: review your expenses, prioritize your expenses, make a plan to pay and honor it, and then look to find or to make extra cash. Now, I mentioned this before, but in a time like this, we can only control what we can control, right? And so finances and dealing with your personal finances during this time can be really stressful. And so you have got to take a break. You've got to take a moment to just make sure that you are good, that you are taken care of. And so one of the mistakes I want you to avoid making during this time is to isolate yourselves. Avoid isolating yourself. Again, we are all in this together, and there are so many people going through the same things. And unfortunately, we can't hug and love on one another intimately like this picture reflects. But we can jump on Zoom calls. We can FaceTime people. We can give people a call and just check in on them. And so if you get in a space where you're not feeling good, or you're feeling down, or, focused on all the things that are going wrong, you need to reach out to somebody. And I don't care if that means you put on your calendar that twice a week, I'm going to reach out to someone and just check on them, and just make sure your conversation is around something totally different, right? Something totally unrelated to what's going on, but you are genuinely just calling to check on that person. So avoid that mistake. Make sure you take a step back. And if you are in the Master Playbook community, you've heard me say this before, but stay informed, watch the news, but give yourself a break. We cannot keep constantly, bearing down on the death toll and all the destruction that this crisis is bringing. We need good news too. So stay informed, but take a break. Take a break and go take a walk. Take a break and go get some exercise. If you're like me, I love music. I love dancing. And so when I want to take a break, I'm turning on music. I'm thinking about the good times, and I'm thinking about where me and my husband are going to explore once it's safe to do so. But just take mental control of this situation, of this scenario, and focus on the good. Make sure you can start a gratitude journal. But most importantly, I just want to make sure you guys are taking care of yourselves. So this can be really heavy, but you are not alone, and I don't want you to feel that way at all. So throughout the presentation, I've kind of shared with you guys this resource. This is where you can get it. It's just a simple one pager, and I did it at the beginning of March. So again, it's going to tell you where you can apply for unemployment insurance. It's going to give you those companies that are actually hiring now, and those companies that actually recruit for people who work 100% remote. What you'll also see on there is some information, because I know a lot of people may already have businesses of their own. And so there was a whole kind of list of, the stimulus relief programs for sole proprietors and for small businesses. But if you follow me on social media, you saw today that the article came out this morning that funding is now dried up. It was a first come, first serve kind of help. I don't know if they're going to do a round two. I know there's some chatter around possibly doing a second round of funding. But this is why it's so important as a small business owner or as a sole proprietor to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So that funding has now dried up, and we're now in that waiting period to see if they are going to provide another level of funding. But this is the site to go and download and get that resource. And then now I want to open it up for some questions. And I'm going to see, just see if you guys have any questions at all. I'm going to switch over to the chat function and just see if you guys have any questions at all. And then I will try to get to them. And so one of the questions, so thanks, Jackie, great tips. Yes, absolutely. When life happens like this, you can feel completely overwhelmed. Absolutely. But when you have a plan, when you know what you need to do, when you are focused on taking action, you can actually come out better on the other end. When you compare yourself to people who may just be weeping and wailing about, oh, how am I going to pay? No, let's take action. Let's call these people and see what we can do. So you said, can you apply for unemployment if your employer made you take a salary cut until June? Yes. You still work the same hours as before, but are being paid less. I would think so. I can double check that for you, Victoria, but I have a family member who is a salaried employee, and she works 5 days a week, but they did a mandatory, we're only going to pay you for four days. And to me, that's a salary cut. They're making them take this mandatory pay cut, and then they're probably going to cut it again. But she is eligible to apply for unemployment benefits. And so I don't see why this wouldn't be the same situation. All right. Are there any other questions? I'm just going to scroll the chat. Thank you guys for being so patient, because, child, when I started, this thing was a hot mess. And it's still not doing exactly what I wanted to do, but that's fine. We made it through. I did want to show you guys just one more slide, and that's just the slide for us to keep in touch with one another and to stay connected. And so I'm just going to make sure that you guys can see that last slide. So you guys can get my information. You can follow me across all social media platforms on the Master Playbook. I've given you the link to get the resource. And so I hope that this information was helpful to you. If it was, please join the community. I mean, this is information that I would normally share just behind the walls of the Master Playbook community. So if you aren't already a part of that community, that Facebook group on Facebook, then make sure that you type it in, look for me, the Master Playbook, and look for the Master Playbook community. It's going to ask you maybe 3 questions just to validate that you're a real person, and then we will approve it and get you going. But if there are any other questions that come to mind to you from this talk today, you can reach me at info@themasterplaybook.com. You can email me at info@themasterplaybook.com. And again, if you work with any employee resource groups, or if you work with any kind of community organizations where you think information like this would be helpful, then email me and let me know. I would be happy to keep sharing this information and more information as we get updates with people in your communities and in your networks. So again, thank you for joining me this evening. I appreciate your patience from the beginning, and I look forward to seeing you soon. All right, have a good night. Bye-bye.